Ultra Reddit presents. How did you almost die? I went hiking with a friend and her family in 6th grade during a camping trip they invited me on. We were coming back down and I lost my footing and feel. I started sliding towards a cliff and a bush caught me. If not for that bush I would have gone off at 200 feet, at least / best guess, drop into a lake. Shoeing horses, was tucked under the hind end of one when something spooked him. I got dragged down between his hind legs. He was in cross ties so he could only really move side to side so neither of us could get away. Luckily my boss was nearby and was able to untie him and get him off me. I was really lucky and got off mostly okay. Had a few broken ribs, a punctured and collapsed lung, broke my nose, and got a bunch of soft tissue injuries in my right arm. But it got me out of a Tupperware party I didn't want to go to, so all in all 10 tenths would get trampled again. I was an English teacher in Honduras. About 8 months in, myself and 4 other volunteers decided to go to a bar a few towns over the closest one, to celebrate one of their birthdays. A few hours in, a group of 4 men came in with masks and huge guns and told everyone to drop to the floor. Being half in the bag, or possibly more, I decided to hide in the men's washroom as I was right beside it. I got yanked out by one of the men and pushed up against the wall. He then held the gun to my head and told me to give him everything I had. He then told us 4. We were put together on the walls. We were obviously the ones that were not from around there, and said if we reported them, they knew where we worked, and they did, and would kill us. We reported the incident, although nothing came from it, and I was back home in Canada 3 days later. I was living in a suburban neighborhood in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia that mostly had American families living there. There was a terrorist attack in the compound and 2 houses were bombed while others were raided. Once my mom realized what was happening, we all hid in the basement, whose entrance was a ledge door that could be covered up by a carpet. It was me, my siblings, parents, and neighbor all together down there. Our neighbor needed to know what happened with her family, so she left to go check on them. After she left, a few seconds later, we heard a gunshot. The terrorists were already in the house. The door was still covered by the carpet, but I got nervous every time they walked over us. I let out a quick cry and they heard it and began to search for us. Once they found out about the door under the carpet, we could hear the police sirens nearby, and that's when they left. We waited an hour before we left the basement, and as we got out I saw our neighbor dead on the floor. Mom was too late to cover my eyes. We later hid out in another house once we knew it was safe. I was 3 at the time. Parents never took me therapy cause I somehow wasn't traumatized by the event. I had planned out my attempt for a while. I had stocked up on prescriptions, lied about taking them for months, and decided on a day when my mother and my brother would both be at work all night. So my mother left for her shift around 6 p.m. and wouldn't be home until 6 a.m. My brother left for his shift around 7 p.m. and wasn't going to be home until 2 a.m. Immediately after he left, I took everything. I mean everything. I even remember swallowing a giant bottle of ibuprofen, the kind with like 200 pills, and every kind of vitamin we had along with me and my mother's prescriptions. I just downed it all. My brother gets to work, business is slow and they're overstaffed, so they sent him home. He was home only about an hour after he left. He found me, put me in his car, and speeded to the nearest hospital. I slipped into a coma on the way there, and by the time they actually got to me I had stopped breathing. I stayed in the coma for about a month before waking up mostly healthy. I do have some stomach damage though. I'm extremely grateful that I survived, and I still joke with my brother from time to time about how he could ask for anything and I would have to do it. I literally owe him my life. Car crash. Lost control of the truck on black ice and it was heading towards a bunch of trees. I knew if we hit them we were dead. Luckily I was able to get it turned towards the other side of the road where the ditch was. We plowed into the ditch and the truck went on its side and rolled end over end until it came to rest on a telephone pole. My last thought as we hit the ditch was fuck. Hitting the trees and stopping dead would have killed us. The longer duration of rolling and dissipating energy saved us that night. A cop pulled a gun to my head almost point blank simply because I was walking, with my headphones on, and couldn't hear him. This occurred several years ago and I was working in a rural town in PA for a few weeks, woke up early to grab a cup of coffee before work, put on some tunes and walked back to my hotel room from the main lobby. Next thing you know, gun to my head. Why did he do it? Because some young woman went missing the night before and I was new to town. Check this out though, it turns out that she was crashing at her friend's the entire time. Someone at the hotel saw what happened and knew the individual. I am not 100% sure if he was going to actually shoot me, but his hands were shaking. I don't think I look weird or unusual in any way, but, yeah, he didn't even apologize afterwards. Electrocuted when I was 2, stuck a fork in the socket, left a burned handprint on a wooden table, at least what I was told, was trying a new medication patch at age 17 for anxiety, woke up overdosed, threw up, fainted face first on the hardwood kitchen floor, ended up getting stitches and never taking medication again. Stopped at a stop sign, there was a car on the side of the road less than 10 feet from me, and someone pulled a gun out his window and pointed it directly at me. Looked for a few seconds then just put the gun back and I drove away confused. Was driving to work in the early morning in the winter, a giant snowplow slowly started to steer into my lane. I got as far right as I could, slammed on the brake, and he continued to steer into my lane. Directly in front of my car, he swerved back to his lane at the very last second as I seen the giant plow barely miss my windshield. There's a few more resulting from prescription drug adverse reactions in my childhood, SSRIs, SNRIs, benzos, etc. I was stopped legally to turn left off the highway. I was in a heavy-duty pickup hauling extremely flammable drip condensate from the pipelines. A half-ton pickup was going about 70 miles per hour and didn't stop until he hit me. I couldn't do anything to avoid it without causing more damage, so I had to sit there and watch it come. Luckily, me and the guy that hit me was able to walk out of the hospital. Knowing what I was hauling, I was expecting the worst. People, if you don't know, the red placards you see on trucks/trailers are not stop signs. I'm not sure how close I was to dying actually, but damn if I didn't feel like that could have been my end there. We were in P class but that day was the last class before switching from swimming, so the teacher gave us the whole class off on the pool. My classmates decided to do horseback battles, to know what's really called, and I decided to join when someone asked me to be the horse. I was a little bit worried about carrying the dude on my shoulders because he was heavier than me, but I managed and felt okay walking around in the water, but fell on the first shove. Here's the problem. Once we were both submerged, he locked his legs around my neck. So I really struggled to get his legs off me with my hands with the little air I had. I don't even remember how I managed to get him off me, but by then I had already instinctively tried to breath through my mouth inside the water. In the end I got out, and was helped towards the edge so that I can cough whatever I can and finally breath. Have been afraid to play like that ever since. 15 years old, got shot at with a hunting rifle. Dude was poaching deer while I was out shooting squirrels. He shot at the sound of a stick breaking. It was me. Bullet snapped branches off about 4 feet from me. 16 years old. Got shot at while fishing. Was fishing in a creek behind a farm. Farmer started shooting at my buddy and I for some reason. Not like warning shots, we could hear the bullets whizzing by. There's no such thing as trespassing if you are fishing where this occurred. Apparently farmer was unaware of this. We ran away. Never told anyone because we were dumb kids. Working on an oil rig in my early 20s. The pipe spinner had exploded, spraying hydraulic oil everywhere. The driller was winching 90 feet of heavyweight drill collar up onto the rig floor, about 15 pounds. The driller was being a rammy fucking idiot and the collar bounced off the V-door and came swinging in towards me. I slipped on the hydraulic oil and landed sitting with my back to the drill stump and the heavyweight collar swinging at me. Was pulled out of harm's way by the other roughneck at the last second. Working as a cop in my late 20s. Mental health apprehension. Fella goes nuts and tries to get my gun. Actually gets the holster unsnapped and the gun partially out before I was able to knock him out. He kept struggling so I kept punching. He was super high on meth. I ended up punching like a half gallon of blood out of his head. I thought he was dead. He lived. I used to work 12-hour shifts, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., with call-outs overnight. I had worked my shift, gone home, got called out at 1:30 a.m., got there, worked out that there was an electrical issue, go to the switch room, turn off the supply to what I needed to work on, get to work, just doing up the last screw with my hand in an awkward position inside the panel. Then, the back of my hand touched something that buzzed and my entire left arm went numb. What I had touched was a mains feed bus bar carrying a 415V, 600A 3-phase supply. I was lucky it was the back of my hand, because my muscles spasmed away from the shock, otherwise I would have fried in seconds. It turned out that in my sleep-deprived state I hadn't turned off the right part of the supply. When I was young I took a 1 pound from my dad's coin dispenser. Me being a weird child thought it could be chocolate money so I ate it. Well, attempted to swallow it. The coin was lodged in the pipe in my throat vertically. Luckily, I remember gagging loads and my mum going crazy, and that is it. I was rushed to the closest hospital, however they did not have any tools to dislodge the coin. Therefore I was rushed to another hospital over 10 miles away, where they took it out. Looking back now it's pretty remarkable how that coin stayed in a vertical position for so long. If it went horizontally I would not be here. It must have been over an hour of it lodged in my throat. To this day I sometimes have trouble breathing and I hate taking tablets due to this.
Thank you for watching this fantastic story. Please tap one of the 4 videos on the screen for another amazing top Reddit stories.